Hey class, it's Mr. Andrews. So today we're going to hit the ground running on the IRB process. As you may remember from yesterday, the IRB stands for Internal Review Board. This is a group of individuals made up of administrators, department chairs, people who make up the higher echelons of authority at Carmel High School. And they exist specifically for the reason of looking at your research proposals and looking at these IRB forms that we're going to be filling out. And the reason why they're going to be looking at them, as we mentioned yesterday, is to assess risk, is to figure out how can we protect the researcher, how can we protect the institution, the Carmel High School, but how can we also protect the other people who potentially will be research subjects as well. And so being able to describe to this IRB in full detail what your research is going to look like will help them to make an informed decision, because lack of information is the #1 reason why they make no decision at all, why your approval process may be either delayed or simply denied because of a lack of information. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to prepare for that. November 6th is the date that we're looking at for the deadline with IRBs, which means over the next 2.5 weeks, we're going to be making very focused efforts on preparing the IRB and focusing on understanding our own methods. Because to understand our procedures, our methods for research, is to understand how how we're going to avert risk and how we're going to address ethical concerns. So I wanted to show you today's lesson because there are 2 things you're going to be doing right after this video to prepare yourself for this. The 2 things I'm asking you to do are, 1, to look through where it says here, the complete IRB status form. This is a form I've created on Google for you to fill out. As you're filling it out, it is going to give you directions to decide which IRB status you've been given. You may remember yesterday that there are really 3 different statuses you could be given, right? The first one is expedited, which is reserved for a full panel review. This is people who are going to be utilizing human subjects and encountering potentially risky or sensitive scenarios or topics. The second one is exempt. Exempt is given to individuals who may be working with human subjects, but may not necessarily be conducting research that either has a topical risk or a procedural risk to its subjects. And then finally, the last one is actually exempt status as well, but that's ascribed to people who are not doing any research involving human subjects whatsoever. These might be individuals who are conducting research over content analysis, or who are doing scientific research on it may be materials or data, but it's not going to involve human subjects. Those would be exempt as well. So ultimately, this form is meant to divide you into one of those 2 forms and to guide you towards one of those 2 forms, either exempt or expedited status. Okay. So when you get in, you're going to see this. It's going to look like a Google form. You're going to fill in your full name. How much time do you think you're going to need to complete your research? This is something you might have to really consider for a moment. Give your best guesstimate. Roughly speaking, how many weeks do you think it's going to take from beginning to end for you, from the time you begin conducting and gathering data to when you're going to be done gathering the data? Okay, so that's what we mean by how long will it take your research to complete? How long will you be actually just gathering data? If it's a survey, for instance, it might take you just a few days. If, however, you're running like an experiment where you need to check in with people over weeks, you might be looking at 6-7 weeks, right? So letting me know that's going to be helpful in terms of timelines, in terms of understanding what your research is going to need. The second question has to do with the kinds of subjects you could be encountering. Are you going to be working with any at-risk populations? And then the final question asks you, is your research going to involve interaction with human subjects in general? Right? And if you answer yes to that, you're going to be taken to another page that's going to ask you a series of other questions. If you answer no to that question, I'm not dealing with human subjects, Mr. Andrews, good news, you can stop right there. You can hit next after you've clicked on this button here. This link is actually going to take you to your very own copy of the exempt form, because if you're not dealing with humans, you are automatically exempt. So you can make a copy and you can start working on it today. If, however, you answer, yes, I am actually going to be working with human subjects. And let me just type in a few things here real quick. It's going to take you to another screen. This is going to ask you questions about what is the topicality of your research. And this covers a bunch of different areas that are considered sensitive topics of research by Carmel Clay Schools. And so these are areas that you're going to want to make sure to check the box on if that is you. You want to be honest and upfront from the get-go. You don't want a false approval. You also are going to look at a second section of questions that ask if your research methods are going to require or involve certain aspects in their methods. If it involves any of these, you want to make sure that you check that. Now, at the bottom, you're going to be faced with a choice. If you checked any of the boxes above, you're going to be in expedited status, and you're going to need to click there to start your own expedited form. If, however, you said, hey, I'm working with human subjects, but good news, I'm not clicking any of these boxes here. None of these apply to me whatsoever. You're in exempt status. Good news. You can click on that and you can proceed. But the good news is this is going to get you a copy of the kind of form that you need. And both of them have their own unique aspects. So make sure that you're answering these questions honestly and you're really taking the time to consider them. So once you're done with that form, the next step is to begin working on the form itself. So the first thing you want to do is take a look through it, okay? And once you're looking through the form, let me just show you a quick example of one right here. Okay, so let's take a look at the expedited form. Some of you are going to be dealing with this one, right? I'm going to make a copy of it. So the good news is right away you're going to be prompted to make a copy. You'll already have your own in your Google Drive. So good work. You've already started on your IRB. After that, then, you're going to see right at the top there is 4 different slots for you to include links to specific articles or artifacts. These are the artifacts we talked about yesterday. These include data collection or tracking sheets. So if you're creating a spreadsheet to collect data in, if you're creating a paper form, you want to make sure that you're linking to that. If you're creating a survey questionnaire interview, you want to have a link to that. Is a Google Doc, is a Google form, whatever it is, wherever you're storing it. Recruitment materials. How are you going to recruit participants? Are you creating posters? Are you creating scripts? Are you sending out emails? You need to include the text prepared of that right here. Consent documents. You're going to add a link right here. And here's the good news. If you're not sure what consent form or how to create the consent form, I got news for you. Just below the item number 2 here in today's homework, you can see I've linked to consent forms for adult subjects and for minor subjects. So if you're dealing with human beings, you're going to need consent forms. You're going to make sure to include that. If you're working with adults, in other words, you're working with people who are over the age of 18, 18 or up, you're going to use the adult subjects. If you're working with minors, even if you're working with other students at Carmel Clay Schools, you want to make sure to click that. So I'm going to click minor real quick. I'm going to make a copy of it. Good news again, you've already started because it creates a copy for you. And here's the cool part. You're going to insert the title of your study, and what you're going to do is you're going to try to fill in the information as much as possible. What I've done is I've created these bracketed pieces where you can add in information. Make sure that you're being as specific and as detailed as possible, okay? And just walking through the process of making sure you're filling in all the brackets. But this is the form you're going to want to use, okay? Because it follows a simple format that's easy for people to follow, and it checks all the boxes that you need to. So by the end of today, the goal here is that you know which IRB status you have, exempt or expedited, okay? That you have a copy of that form that you need and you're starting to work on it. And that finally you have a copy of the kind of consent form if you need one, and that you're working on that as well. So that is the approach for today. That is overall what we're trying to do today. Next class, we will talk a little bit about how your specific method is going to play out in terms of writing in the IRB. So if you hit a wall in terms of describing the methodology in your IRB or in terms of creating anything around your methodology in the IRB, don't sweat it. Move on and go to the next thing that you can work on. In other words, try to work on as much as you can up front in these materials, but know that next class we're going to do a little breakout session depending on your different methodology and talk about what do you need to specifically detail and write about in the IRB depending on your approach and your process for research. So I've talked a lot. But it's your time now to work. And with that, I want to leave you with one last thought, which is the password for today. I'm sure you all are waiting for it. So here it is. Today's word is quilted, because I've got this wonderful cozy quilted vest on, and I'm really enjoying it. It feels really nice to have that this time of year. I forget that the cold weather means comfy vests. So quilted is the word of the day and the password to get your 5 participation points. Thanks again for your attention, and reach out to me if you have any questions whatsoever. Take care, guys.